But the academic side, I was, I think, a little bit above average. I enjoyed languages, but I didn't really enjoy the teaching we had. For one thing, the teacher of both French and German spoke English, French and German with a West Country accent. I knew it was all wrong, but I couldn't put it right by myself. And also, my brother had been there for 2 years just before. And so I was teacher's pet because my brother was brilliant at languages. So the music went on. When I returned to Ackworth, Mr. Turtle was no longer there. And they engaged a man from the brass band world who had absolutely no idea of the French horn. And after a useless year, I said to the authorities that it just wasn't worth them wasting their money on these lessons. So for the rest of my time, I was self-taught with consequences that will come later on. So, all right, I was very glad to have gone to the school. And there were certain things. There were Saturday evening lectures. Some stay in the mind. There was a man called Hosking, I think, who was one of the early bird photographers. And he came with some wonderful pictures of birds. This was with a lantern, what do you call it? A magic lantern, slides. And sixth form boys would be working the lantern slides. And he told us very graphically of how when he was photographing an owl, which of course you can only do it at night because they are nocturnal birds, the flash made by very primitive means in those days scared the owl, who came and pecked his eye out. And he told us how he had to walk for a mile to find a house, somebody to look after him. We also had not Jack McIntosh, one of the great trumpet players who came, and the thing I remember about him was that he had an echo cornet. Instead of putting a mute in the end of the cornet, you could just press a valve, and the air went through a constricted pipe, came out, not out of the bell, but out of the side of the instrument, very, very like a muted cornet. So he would play woodland echoes or something of that sort. Yodelay, repeated with this valve down as a muted sound and so on. So it's funny, the things that stick in your mind from 6 years of being at a school. Another thing is the food. Well, we had our own farm, and we didn't have anything to do with it at all. It was run as a venture to feed the school. So all the food was fresh, except that from about 9 o'clock in the morning, you could smell the cabbage being boiled. There was one dessert that many mothers of pupils tried to replicate and never succeeded. It was called Cowboy's Hat. It was like a bread, sort of sweetened. It was circular, and it had raisins in it, but the cowboy's hat was a very hard crust that was glazed on the top, and that went down very well. I remember early on, when I first arrived there, I looked up at the ceiling of the dining hall, a very high ceiling, and there were greasy blobs. And when I asked about this, I was told, oh yes, the boys would get a bit of butter on the end of a knife, flick it to try and get it to stick. Now, when you consider that one of those blobs of butter was perhaps half a week's ration of butter, get some idea of what rationing was like during the war. It was very severe, and didn't get any better. In fact, I think it got tighter towards the end of the war. But we were adequately fed. Mid-morning, there was a box put outside the door of the dining hall with chunks of bread, and we were so hungry, of course, teenage boys, that we go and grab that. There was even more bizarre result of hunger. Below the school there was the great garden, and some of this was devoted to food, and Yorkshire is the centre of growing rhubarb, and sometimes in the summer term, going through Great Garden to sports or to the swimming pool, if there was nobody around, I'd be coming back probably from sports, I'd pick a stick of rhubarb and eat it raw, a sensation I can't recommend. And when I returned in September, walked down to the Great Garden, and I could taste rhubarb in the back of my mouth. Such was the strength of it.